Yes. Good evening, everybody. I'm Bruce, N1LN. I am the current president of OCRA. Current, emphasis on that. You'll hear more later. I'd like to welcome everybody to the November meeting. We've got a pretty aggressive agenda tonight. We're going to, as we do, start off with introductions, and I'll make a couple of opening comments. And then we have an update on the Christmas party. We have the Q3, excuse me, not rush the year away. The Q3 financial report from Ron, from the treasurer. Then we're going to get into an update from Matthew on the program survey that he put together and working with the board of directors sent out, probably a month and a half, 2 months ago. And we wanted to take the opportunity to review the results of that program survey. And what the program is what do you guys want to see for next year? Or maybe more. So Matthew will give you an update on that. And then the final thing is you'll get me back up here and we'll talk about the election for the leadership team for 2026. So we'll go over the current slate of candidates and what's going on with that. So as we always do, let's wander over here and we'll start off with Dan.
Dan, KR4UB, Southwest Orange County.
J, KM4, IRF, somewhere in Orange County. Trees.
Klain, KE4CA in Chapel Hill.
Dave, NA4VY, Mebane.
Paul, N2XF, little town of Putney. Well, this cookie's sure good. Bob, W4FK, Hillsboro.
Chip, KF4WBK in Chapel Hill. Be sure to get a cookie and reset your chocolate imbalance.
Dave, K4DJW, Rougemont.
John, KM4MDR, F1.
And Dave, W4SAR, Efland.
Just one quick announcement about Bob. I used to like Bob. Bob just had a knee replaced. And if you remember me going through that for the last couple of years, I've had both of them replaced. Boyd has had his replaced. And sit down, Bob. I don't want you to say anything. Go ahead, stand up. So I asked Bob a question tonight and I said, so how you doing? He says, well, I have my good days, my bad days. And I said, well, how's the range of motion making out? He says, well, I'm not quite as far along as I was with the other knee. I said, well, where are you? And I'm expecting, somewhere where I am, not now, but where I was at that time, like, 105, 110. He said, well, I'm only up to 132. Now I'm not at 132 with a knee that's almost 2 years old. So, I used to like Bob. Got a comment there, sir?
I've got one more to go, so maybe that one will go in the dumper for you.
I hope not, really.
Ron, KO4, RON, Pittsburgh.
Boyd, KO4GJO, Hillsboro.
Matthew, KQ4ZYW, Mebane, and on Zoom, we have Fred, KN4QBZ, Charles, KQ4TNF, Arash, KR4GOJ, Jerry, KR4NJ, Ken, KO4DHJ, JR, N4JQR, Joe, K4SAR, and Mark, KR3AM. And we also have Janice, KQ4ZGL.
Thanks, you.
Wilson, W4BOH, Hillsboro. And since I have the microphone, we have door prizes on the back table, hookup wire, and the off chance that somebody's actually going to build something. Good chance for free wire.
Okay, if Matthew, if you'll bring up the presentation and go up to the agenda, that'd be great. Okay, there we are. Opening comments. Yeah, as you'll see, we've got quite an interesting agenda for tonight. It's not really a normal OCRA meeting because we usually have a program. But this is the business meeting. Early in the year, we said we'd, probably have to take certain nights where we have membership meetings and not have some specific topic that we're going to talk about or monopolize the whole meeting with. But as you can see, we've got some stuff up there that is very important. And I don't think there's any one that is any more interesting or more important than the other one. But, and also I don't have to talk all the time, which is a really great thing. So with that, we should have time at the end. I'm not sure how long everyone is going to take, but I wanted to make sure we had enough time so we could spend significant time on them if people had questions. So with that, let me get a hold of Boyd and let him kick it off here with the 2025 Christmas party update.
Okay, we're making progress, getting some more people signed up on the list. If you haven't been able to sign up on the list in person at the meetings, you can shoot me an email and I'll send you my mailing address and you can mail me a check. Make the checks out to me, Boyd Hudson. Don't make them out to the club. We're trying to keep them separate. Next slide. And there's all the pretty artwork. This will be taking the place of the December meeting on December 8th, from 6 to 8:30 p.m. If we can get people to help set up, you can arrive at 5 in the evening. Okay. Okay, so if some folks can show up around 10 in the morning and help set up, that'll be very helpful. For all you folks on Zoom, it's just not going to be the same if you're not there in person. It has a whole different flavor. And I guess that about sums it up. It's $10 a person. Send me your money. There'll be an update in the reflector. Oh, and there it is.
Boyd, would you put your email in the chat, please?
We'll add it. Yes. For new folks, you actually want to go back around the side behind the church building there, and it can be confusing if you just get there at night. Okay. Okay, so the next. Okay, so we have a map and there'll be a link to it in one of your future reflector notes. And the list on the table is probably more current than that. No, but I'll be happy to stop by Charles's house and pick up his money. I know where he lives. All right, that about wraps it up then. Yes. Oh, one more slide. If anybody wants to make donations for the door prizes, use your imagination. Anything from hand radio stuff to non-hand radio stuff. That about wraps it up.
Thanks, Boyd. Okay, next slide, you're going to see it says stop recording. As you probably have heard in the past, we record these meetings, we post them on YouTube so that we can look at them and they're open to the public so they can look at them. But we all, okay, probably a year and a half ago, we went ahead and passed an increase in dues for the club. And those of you that were here then understood then why we wanted to do that. We have some folks that haven't been here that long or have not been here at that meeting. And you're maybe saying, gee, why did you put an increase in club dues when you have a positive balance that seems to be growing? If any of you use the 442150 repeater, and we hope you do, that's the reason. That repeater is as reliable as it is. It's sitting at about the 1,100 foot level on the WUNC tower. In the good old days, some of the folks in this room, Dan, who else has been up there? Dave's probably been up there. Wilson probably been up there. We used to be allowed to do our own service on that repeater. You don't have to climb the tower. There's an elevator, okay, when it's working. But it was very nice because we could do all of our own maintenance. So if we had an issue, and we've had some over the years, we could take the parts with us, go up the tower, make the repair, test it out, come down the tower. Had to be scheduled with, you know, the WUNC folks that manage that. But we could do that for the cost of driving there and driving home and the parts. Well, not anymore. In order to get on that, there's been significant management changes at the university. And you can't blame them. Liability insurance these days, everybody's trying to do something. And that's where I'm going to go to OSHA requirements for, you have to be a certified tower climber now with all the appropriate equipment and insurance to be able to do that. And not only unless it's changed, there had to be 2. So there has to be 2 certified tower climbers. And so now we have the cost, the time to schedule, the cost associated with 2 certified tower climbers, as well as whatever the pieces parts might be. Well, these are certified tower climbers. They're not necessarily technical experts in how to repair, replace, or be able to do anything on a repeater. Enter Dan and his repeater gang, Paul being a member of that crew. About 2 years ago, maybe, we put it up to the club that we would like to buy a complete spare part. And that part is the amplifier, the transceiver, the power supplies, essentially everything up there. And what Dan and Paul and his other gang in the repeater group did was in Dan's cellar, they welded a chassis, they put everything together, they programmed it all, made sure that it worked fine. And that actually is on the air now as a backup repeater, rather than let it sit there and just catch dust. It's kind of a warm spare. I won't say a hot spare because it doesn't get a lot of use, okay, which we would appreciate if people use them more, but that is our spare. So if we have to send somebody up the tower now, they don't necessarily have to be experts as long as they can follow, unplug the blue plug, plug the blue plug from the new part in where the other blue plug was, or the red plug or the green plug, or, you know, so it's a very easy swappable sub-assembly so we can keep that repeater on the air. Still haven't gotten to the answer though. If we get somebody to go up that tower and do that, we're probably looking at $10,000 to $12,000 just to repair it. That used to be free. So that's why when Ron shows us how much we have in the bank as spare parts, that's our, if we need to repair the repeater cushion, and we really don't want that to drop. So I'd be glad to answer that. Ron was not here when that happened. Dan and I kind of put the numbers together, and we put through with the leadership team at that time, asked for the increase. Yeah, Dave has a question. Hang on.
Spare repeater, is that up there next to the unit? No.
So one thing we did not want to have to do was to climb the tower to get that repeater. The spare repeater is in Durham at Radio. Okay, 442075, close to 442150, So hopefully there's no cavity retuning. Okay, so it is on the ground, sort of. Just go over there, get the parts, bring them over, give them to the certified tower climbers and say, this is what we want you to do. So purposely, it is not up there because we don't want that subjected to the weather at, 12,000 or 1,200 feet on top of that platform. Any other question?
The question was, what about the antenna up there? That would probably, that would cost even more. That antenna is 28 years old, still hanging in there. The repeater that's up there now has been up there now 9 years. Keep my fingers crossed, but the thing that anybody spending any kind of reliability engineering, if you got fans, that's going to be your first failure, more than likely. The absolute highest reliability fans that are sold have a 9-year lifespan. They start seizing up, and then whatever they're cooling starts overheating. So that's one of the failure modes.
Yeah, so the antenna would be an issue. We do not have a spare, and that's one of the vertical wrap dipole things. Yeah, that's a very expensive antenna, probably 600 to 1,000. Okay, yeah, about $1,500 for the antenna. Plus the cost, right? And let me get back over here because there's going to be a question, and it won't fit in the elevator, right?
It will not fit in the elevator. The skilled people who go up there have means to get the antenna up there.
Yeah, and all of that costs money. So, we may be in that conversation sometime. I mean, I don't know how we can avoid that conversation because it's, my Fitbit died today, and it's not quite as, technically difficult as the repeater in the antenna, but, and it's ground level, so I can just swap this one out pretty easily. But electronic stuff fails. So let's just hope that when it does, we can get there. We do have the money. We just have to coordinate the right resource. Any other questions before we move on to the next agenda topic? Oh, there's one up here. Out of curiosity, any temperature sensors to catch the overheating before it results in irrecoverable damages? Great question, Arash. I don't know if we have temperature model.
The biggest issue is the power amplifier itself, which is a separate unit. The newest one that we bought, because the company who manufactured the one that's up on the tower now is effectively out of business. That's another thing that's happened is a lot of the suppliers that these repeaters have been made from are out of business. The newest power amp we have has all kinds of self-monitoring. If it starts getting too hot, it'll throttle the power back. It has a number of safeguards built in it. The old one does not. Probably at some point, all these repeaters, say we use up our spare, probably they all will be replaced by Motorola repeaters, which are now available as top-notch used equipment. It's been the highest reliability stuff. The only challenge has been unaffordability if you're going to buy it new. The very first repeater that went up there was a Motorola repeater. So history may eventually return to that.
Thanks, Dan. And great question, Arash. Yes, I see Fred's comment. Arash is a double E. Absolutely. Good question, Arash. Okay. Any other questions on Ron's presentation on the Treasury or our thank you for allowing us to increase the dues and have the money in the bank in case we need to repair the repeater? Okay. With that, we're going to have a change of control over there. The next topic is going to be Matthew, and he's going to be going over the survey. So Matthew and Lori can change chairs. I'll go sit down and turn the floor over to Matthew.
Evening, everyone. Can we go to the next slide? So for anyone that hasn't come to a lot of the recent meetings or anything like that, we recently had a survey that went out to see what topics for the programs for each of the monthly meetings is everyone interested in, because we'd always get a whole bunch of topics and stuff like that. So we wanted to kind of see, you know, the more interesting ones. Is there anyone that's like not interested at all? We had this is actually I think a typo because I didn't count right. We actually had 46 people submit the survey. Fun fact, September 11th had the most submissions. And then we received submissions from both experienced members like Wilson, as well as new hams like myself and Juan. Can we go to the next slide? So here is all of the topics that you could choose from. We had a total of 27. They ranged from DX operating to ITAC, and we had a blast, all of us on, I had help from the board to write definitions to all of these, because we realized if we sent out a survey that just said, pick which ones you would want to know, maybe I have, no idea what in the world is M17, right? But then, if I read a description about it, and I was like, well, actually, I would be interested in learning more about that. So I want to thank everyone that submitted definitions for that. And go to the next slide. Drum roll, please. Here is the top 5 topics that got the most votes. Antennas, VHF, UHF, HF, and above had a total of 28 votes. Followed by station safety and grounding, power, lightning, etc., with 20 votes. I think Bruce kind of influenced everyone from his tales about a couple months ago when his house got attacked by lightning, and all of the fun repairs and costs that he had to do. And then in third place was battery types, applications, and maintenance with 19 votes. Digital modes with 16 votes. We had a tie of DX operating and contesting with propagation, sunspots, SFI, ANK index, etc. Both of those got 15 votes. And then WinLink had 14 votes. And I know everyone likes pretty colors, so if we can go to the next slide. Here is a nice pretty graph showing the top 10 topics picked. I have both bar graph, and then if we go to the next slide, just because I know people love data and stuff like that, even had a very nice pie chart. And then for everyone who really, really likes data, we can go to the next slide. I did all of the topics that we had with the number of votes tallied. So we had quite a lot, like traveling with amateur radio, radio history and equipment, radio theory, from XTAL receivers to SDR, and DMR and NCPRN. Those are 4 different topics that were listed. All of those got 12 votes. And for M17 and Sartopo got only 1 vote each. Can we do the next slide, please? Oh, and also I should have asked, was there any questions about anything? Good, okay. We also had an option on the form. Was there any topics that wasn't listed that you would be interested in? Just so people could say like, hey, I'm really, really interested in this. You didn't list it, but I would love to have a presentation about it. Parks on the Air, actually 2 people submitted that topic. I am one of those 2 people. Radio theory was another one, like what creates the signal was the topic that was submitted. RX noise reduction in congested urban environments, diversity reception, remote station setup and operating, hams doing radio astronomy, which I think that would be a really interesting one. Building HF amplifiers, grounding, how to set up your Radio Shack, how to set up a tower. I know I'd be very interested in both how to set up the Radio Shack and how to set up a tower, since I'm very new to that. Overview of CERT. We have POC radios such as Zello Rapid Radio, Emergency Operation Go Kits, spotting and what is a cluster in reference to spotting, grounding and bonding for permanent antenna installation, and an antenna or setup safety. And then we also had an option on the form where people could volunteer if they wanted to present any of the topics. So of course we have Bruce with DX operating and contesting. You can, if you ever get out to his shack, you can see all of the awards that he has on his wall. So I know he's very interested in that topic. Dan said that he would like to help with batteries, types, applications, and maintenance. Arash said he would love to help with Arduino and coding, especially with scripting. Ron also listed Arduino, and I know you had mentioned about the keyer that you're built. So I just want you to know that we are aware of that, and I think that would be a great, especially if you want to work with Arash with that presentation. I think that would be great to bring that in. Aurora did microcontrollers and Raspberry Pi. Sam said he would love to help with APRS. Wilson had radio history, equipment, and theory. So if we can keep them around, that means we can have them give 3 different presentations for the year. Thomas said that not exactly ham radio related, but he does have a real world computer security experience, open source operating systems, Linux and Raspberry Pi devices with ham radio that he would love to give a presentation on. Kevin said he would like to give on technical presentation on GAAS transistor reliability. Mark, who I know is on Zoom, mentioned how cryptography toolkits secure the internet, which I think would be pretty cool. I said that I would love to give a presentation on Parks on the Air because I recently did one for the Durham FM Association, and Dave said he would be interested in giving a presentation on digital modes. And any questions?
Unfortunately, the volunteer don't necessarily line up with what the interest is. So.
Yes, so some people listed topics that were actually on the thing. Some people said, hey, this wasn't listed as a topic, but it would be something that I'd be interested in presenting. So that's definitely something that afterwards we'll have to consider. How do we want to do that, and how do we want to parse all that? Lori, can you do the next slide, please? Okay, and as I mentioned, next steps. So we have to determine which ones are presentations, which one are training sessions, and then which topics just might be out of scope, what we want to do. So, you know, something might work as programs for our monthly meeting, whilst other topics might be something that is just a little bit too complex or a little bit too hands-on, that it would be better if we kind of did like a training session, or we kind of did kind of like what we're doing with building over at Wilson's currently at the Land of Magic. And then even for the presentations, we have to identify, is the presenter within the club? Maybe the specific topic, it would be better if we got someone that was certified in the topic or experienced. I know previously we had that presentation where we had some people that were with forestry that came in and gave a presentation on that, and then even tied it in with radios. So it might be something like that. And then also determine what month should this presentation, because we also want to give people time to work on that presentation. We don't want to be like, okay, you're giving it in January and you only have like a month to prepare for that presentation. And of course, anything else that we have planned, like preparing for field day and stuff like that, that might take up too much time for what that person wants to present on.
Or what about show and tell? Like, for example, Wilson is working on this project of building transmitters from TV sets. Now, he could come in there and talk all about what happened. And maybe give some examples of things that the group actually made.
Yeah, I think that would be excellent. Who wants to share some thoughts?
Yeah, so Boyd and I, you're sitting too close to the conversation that we just had. So Boyd and I were talking about the January meeting. And January is going to be the election, which I will talk about shortly. But we also said that election will probably take, 5 minutes, maybe 6. What if we did a show and tell in January? And I just said to Ron, hey, maybe January is a great way to introduce your Kier. And now we've got potentially Wilson with what's going on Sundays on the TV going to transmitter. So what I was going to do, and when I got back up there, what I'm doing right now is saying that what Boyd and I were talking about here is maybe we'll do a January show and tell in addition to the elections. And that way it'd be a great way to start off the year. Nobody has to worry about putting real detailed presentations together over the holidays. And you can just bring in the thing that you want to show and tell, maybe a couple of slides or whatever that is good. It doesn't have to be a full-blown presentation. So Dave, great idea.
Yeah, excellent idea. I will say what we're currently building at Wilson's. We have met, I think, a total of 3 times, and so far I have learned how to take apart TV components, and that's about it. So maybe we'll be ready by January. We'll definitely have to see. Okay, I think that was the last slide. Yes.
Matthew, thank you. And I really appreciate, Matthew came to the board of directors meeting and he's actually not even elected yet. You'll find that out shortly. But Matthew volunteered to take on the responsibility of putting together the survey based on what we were talking about at the board of directors. So, you'll find out soon, he's running to be secretary for next year. Lori is stepping down as the current secretary, and we needed somebody to take over. So Matthew volunteered. He said he'd like to run for that office. So he started coming to the board meetings, and little did we know, we've got somebody that actually wants to engage. So he wasn't even elected yet. He says, yeah, I'll take that on. I'll put the survey together. I'll get something together for you. You can take a look at it. And like 3 days later, we have this thing in our inbox already that's for us to take a look at and figure out how we're going to do the voting. So super job. Really appreciate it, Matthew. Well done. Okay, review the slate of candidates. So back up one. Okay, we just did the bylaws. We have updated the club bylaws. We did it, I think, at the last meeting. And one of the responsibilities of the president is to present the slate of officers in November for the election in January. Now, why do we need to do it that far in advance? Christmas is the Christmas meeting, or a December meeting is the Christmas party. So we won't be here in December. We want to give everybody the opportunity to know who's running for what office. This is being recorded, so you can go out and look at the YouTube link if you forget who's doing what. But we wanted to do that because it's my responsibility to present this in November. One of the new bylaws also says that we need to have a committee that we will have put together the slate of officers, not necessarily find all the officers, but take the feedback, review with the board of directors, make sure we know who wants to do what, how does it fit in. So the committee was Fred, KN4BQZ, or QBZ rather, Ron, KO4ON in the back, and myself. And Fred was the chairman of that committee, and he's on Zoom tonight. And I think there's probably a couple things he's going to want to jump in here and say. But so the three of us got together and rolled up all the data. Next slide. Okay, and I can't take any credit for these slides. Ron did this, and they are extremely easy to follow. So I really appreciate the super job he did there. So there's two groups of folks in our leadership team. One is the officers, and the officers are president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and trustee. And we can explain those roles, but probably the only one you may not know is the trustee if you haven't been here recently. And then the other one is the board of directors or the board at large. Okay. So this first slide kind of shows where we are today and where we're going tomorrow. So you'll see that I'm currently the president, and I am no longer the president as of January 26th. Now I will be here at the January meeting because the new president will not yet be elected. So I will run parts of that meeting. All right. And because we need to do the voting. So I got to run the part where everybody votes. That position is still open. We'll talk about that in a minute. Boyd is the vice president. So he was the vice president this year, and he will still be next year because we elect people for 2-year terms. In the bylaws, the officers can run for 2-year terms. So you can only be in the office for a total of 4 consecutive years. Then you can take a year off or so, and then you can get reelected, but you can't be in there for any more than 4 years. So Boyd's term will expire the end of next year. Lori, this is the end of her 4th year also, as it is with me. Good news is we've got Matthew. Matthew is running for the secretary for 26 and 27 for his first in a series. We'll change the bylaws so it can be 6 years from now on. Just kidding, Matthew. So Matthew's running for secretary in January. Ron is the current treasurer. He took over from Dan. Okay, and this is Ron's first year. Next year will be Ron's second year. One of the things we did a couple of years ago was we tried to create a position of like an assistant position. And Ron was the first candidate that did that. Matthew is kind of the second candidate. And what that means is if you're not really sure what the job is, or if you want to do that job, work with the current person in that position. So Ron worked with Dan for a period of time here at the end of 24. Matthew has been working with Lori, okay, and he's running the meeting tonight with the Zoom calls, and they've done the Zoom uploads together and the editing and stuff. So Matthew's getting his hands around, a component of the secretary. Ron understood the treasurer, and so Ron is going to be in his second year in 26. Dan, one of the roles that Dan had, this isn't long enough to show you all the roles that Dan had, so we just deleted some. Dan was the treasurer. He's also currently the trustee, and the trustee essentially is the owner of the licenses, of the FCC licenses. So he has to make sure they're all current, make sure that any utilization of the repeaters are good. Nobody's, misusing the repeater. You've all heard of the repeater code of conduct. It's on our webpage if you want to find it. Okay, so Dan, his term expires in 25. Dave has volunteered to be the trustee. Now, not wanting to only have one role, Dave probably will also be the field day coordinator for next year. So you see this theme here where you see same names popping up. We really would love to have a broader representation across the club for some of these officer positions. So, but where we are right now is here. Open president. Fred, and thank you, Fred, and thank you, Boyd. We're talking about, how do we handle the president vacancy for next year? Boyd does not want to run to be president. He does not want to be the official full-time president. He's got a lot of other stuff that he's involved in, and it just won't fit in his schedule. So they have worked out something with others, okay, which has been communicated to the rest of the board, is it's kind of going to be like president by committee. I think that's probably the best way to put it. You know, if you look at the job description, it is the responsibility of the vice president, should the president not be available, to act in his or her stead, to do all duties, et cetera, you know, all those legal words. Okay, so Boyd is going to be the acting president until another president can be found. What that means, though, is that Boyd is not going to be the only one doing all of the work. He's going to have some support from Matthew, some support from Fred, others here. Ron said he'd step up and do some stuff. So it's going to kind of be president by committee. Okay. Which is another good reason why the program stuff, which is a big role that I played this year, get some of that solidified going into next year. Any questions on this page? Okay, next page. All right, so here's the at-large board members. I created a problem a few years ago, which we have fixed with the words that we have changed in the bylaws. The problem that I created was suggesting that if the board met, we had a shortage of people wanting to run for the positions. And I said, well, if you can't commit to 2 years, can you at least commit to 1 for the board members? And quite a few of them said, yeah, I can do that. I can do 1 year. Well, the problem that put in place was it eliminated what we have had for years, where we did not lose all of the members in the same year. So we essentially could have lost all board members this year and had to look for all brand new members. But what we've got is this year and this year only, these 3 board members were allowed to say, yes, I will run for 1 more year. So what does that do? That gives Wilson, Karen, and Aurora are running again for 2026, calendar year 26. Fred, this is Fred's 2nd year. He's always not running for re-election because he's still in his 2-year term. Okay, Dave is not going to be on the board, sort of, kind of, because he's going to be the trustee and the officers. So he's still involved actively. So anything that Dave was aware of involved it, we still have that transition. So we're not getting a void there. Okay, but Dave's not going to be a board member and the trustee. Chris had to resign. He had a lot of family stuff going on, so he left. But what we have here is Bob. Okay, Bob is the president of DFMA. And we're quite pleased to have Bob as a board member on OCRA because we have the ability to do a lot of cross-club linking and know what's going on back and forth. And that works because even though we're 2 clubs, it's kind of like one family once removed or something like that. So they're cousins. Yep. So Bob's running for re-election for 2 years. Ken, KO4DHJ, volunteered. He would like to run for board, so he's 2 years. Ben, KO4BHX, and Jonathan, KR4GOK. So these, with the exception of Bob, these 3 folks here will be brand new to the board, which is great. We're getting more people across the club that are voicing their interest. They're going to come in with some new ideas. They're not in their 70s and 80s, okay, like most of us are. Okay, so that is great. So what we have is we have 4 members whose term will expire in 27, 4 members whose term will expire in 26. Next year, when it's election time, these folks won't need to be reelected, but the other 4 will look for 4 more that will go to the next 2 years. So the way we're fixing the problem I created was to allow 1 more year here, and then in the bylaws, it says that's the last time. So we've already fixed that. Any question? Brad, you want to make any comments, or did I hit the high points?
You more than hit the high points. You did a beautiful job, Bruce. And thank you, Ron.
Thumbs are up. Okay, thanks, Fred. So any questions at all about the election that's coming up in January? We'll have, you know, there'll be all of these, essentially we'll have 7 board members that will be up for election. If you flip back one slide, we'll have secretary and trustee, and we do not have anybody yet for president. So that would be something that we would like to have. Ron just volunteered? No. Hang on a minute. Ron has hand up in the air. Let me go bring the microphone over.
Yeah, because I'm wearing a mask. That's exactly who you want as president. It should be mentioned that since this role is open, we do not have to wait a year before we put somebody in there. If one of you decides next month or whatever that you'd like to run for president, we can't get it in now, but you can do that. We can have mid-year election. The board, the bylaws allows that, so that can happen. So we don't have to wait till 2027 and leave for void there trying to fill 2 roles for a very long time. We'd like to get a full-time president in as soon as we can.
Good point. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, that's one thing in the new bylaws that was there, and we made sure that it was very clear that in the event we need to do have a special membership meeting, whatever the topic may be, and one might be an election, there are rules and words in the bylaws that explain what we have to do in order to make sure people are notified what the club meeting would be, et cetera. So absolutely, you don't need to wait. January 2nd would be fine. You could come forward on or talk to me at the Christmas party. I'll still be the president then. But seriously, so that's where we are with the elections. Okay, now that's the end of this meeting, but there's something else that Boyd and I were talking about. And I just mentioned, thanks to Dave's question, we would like really to start kicking off what we're going to be doing next year. Because I'll still be a club member, so I still have an interest, even though I won't be the president. What we're going to be doing at the meetings for programs. Go home and take a look at this after it's posted. You can see, exactly. You probably read it better on your computer than you could here because the slides were a little hard to read. The people on Zoom actually had probably an advantage because they're looking at their monitor. But some of those topics are in the top 5 that presenters have already volunteered to do programs on. I mean, I did. I volunteered for DXing and contesting. That's the 4th one, though, on the list of 5. It's not up at the top. The board, at our next board meeting, we really need to start to quantify those, as Matthew had on his slide. Is it a presentation? Is it a training session? Where maybe we check with Dave and see if we can have this room on a Saturday, like we did when OCRA had, or Aurora had the room, when we built the direction finder sniffer antennas. That was a ball. We had soldering irons going here and wire flying around and people were building stuff and testing things. That was a lot of fun. So maybe one of those topics would lend itself to a Saturday training session. Or maybe some of them will be out of scope. And I'm going to tell you what, in my opinion, is out of scope. And then I might hand this microphone to another person in the room to see if he agrees with me. Okay. And we'll be the only 2 that will. Matthew mentioned that we had a bit of a lightning event at our house recently. Fortunately, the house wasn't hit, but neither was my towers. I mean, I've got 4 towers in the yard. Wasn't a direct hit. Okay. Each one of those towers has at least 3 ground rods that goes to the tower. Each tower has underground number 6 copper going to the other tower, which goes to the cable house where everything is grounded, which has another number 6 ground wire, copper ground, that goes over to the house, where it goes into the house and there's a 1/2-inch copper rod going in back of all the radios. Everything goes to that copper rod. The ground rod outside the window, actually it's a feed through, I got it through the basement. There's a number 6 copper that goes over to the utility ground. Everything is on the same ground reference. We lost probably $5,000 or $6,000 worth of stuff. And the stuff was unplugged, disconnected, and obviously turned off. So what I consider to be out of scope I'll be really surprised if anybody in this room would want to say, this is exactly what you should do for grounding for your radio or for your, hang on.
So I think the question is, with grounding, you can either do nothing or do something. And what's the something?
I agree with that statement. Okay, I did something. I probably did more than many here would do. Maybe not as much as Dan, but if I stood up in front and said, if you do nothing, the risk is yours. If you do something, and this is what I've done, and I might recommend that, I am not taking the liability on when you say, well, I did what you told me to do and the house just burned down. Now, and I know it won't go that far maybe, but that's where it gets to be out of scope. And the individual I thought might want to make a comment.
And if you do nothing, the worst may happen. Your house may burn down. Again, this subject has so many possibilities of the slightest thing overlooked will bite you. And the question is, how bad will the bite be? I mean, the worst case, every time we have major thunderstorms come through the area, you look at WRAL and how many houses caught fire due to a lightning strike. It happens. It used to be an old-fashioned practice that houses, especially farmers out in the middle of nowhere, would put lightning rods on their house to protect them. For what they cost, I'm surprised they aren't required. I do have lightning rods on my house because when I first built it, we had so many strikes close by, it put the fear of a fire into me. So the do nothing could involve personal safety or your property that you play the odds.
So, and we have been in our house since 2006. The towers went up in 2007 and 2008. They're shorter now than they were because I told Lori before I turned 70, I'm going to get rid of most of the tower maintenance. So I used to have 3, 6, 9, 11, 13 rotating antennas, all on 4 different towers. Okay, each tower is antennas were able to be selected, individually rotated, phased. That's a contest station. Well, I don't have that anymore. So I still have 100 and some foot tower, but now it's a vertical. The other towers are shorter, 60 foot, 50 foot, 70 foot, a lot less antennas, same grounding. What happened? So, I mean, I'd be more than willing to come in here if we do the January show and tell to show you what I have done as a result of that. But I am totally paranoid right now when we have a thunderstorm. Ask Lori, when we have a storm coming through, I mean, on a bulletin board in the ham shack, I've got a picture and I've got words, instructions on how to go from the picture, using the instructions to disconnect as best we can, not knowing if that's enough. Because if I'm not home, Lori does it. Okay. And right now, everything is all disconnected except for the computers running. Everything is disconnected, grounded, etc. So I could do that. To your point, that's something, but no way would I say that's enough. It will, yeah. I mean, there's best practices, okay? Best practices is different than what should I do? Like Matthew's antenna, for example. We're in the process of putting up an R7 vertical for Matthew, okay? In the manual, it says, your antenna will work better if you ground the rod that it is mounted to an 8-foot ground rod immediately below where the antenna is mounted. Doesn't say a damn thing about lightning. It says your antenna will work better because they're not going to get it, Cushcraft, who's out of business, who sold it to MFJ, who's out of business, who sold some of it to DX Engineering, who I'm sure won't cover it. They're not going to be held responsible by saying, this for lightning protection, ground this antenna. It could be, but in the manual for the R7, it says your antenna will perform better if you ground it.
I wanted to flip that question.
Let me just comment. You can't do anything. How many TV stations over the air do you see going off the air when those towers are getting hit all the time? They've done a lot.
Bruce, I wanted to
Yeah,
flip
go,
the question.
go ahead, Fred. Go ahead.
I don't remember who asked the question or who thought maybe that should be a program, but maybe he wants to present that program and then perhaps accept responsibility or liability for his presentation.
I doubt that.
Well, I don't know.
So my assumption would be that we have a lot of folks here that are in some state of putting together new stations.
Right.
We have, you know, I mean, I didn't actually hold back what happened when we got the lightning event. So if they're in the process of putting together a new station and they know what happened at our house, you know, maybe that says, well, gee, what can I do? What should I do? So I think there's folks that are either building new, making modifications, adding to whatever, that would like some assistance in how do I ground my station, rather than somebody that's, you know, let me stop there and go to something else. I asked a licensed electrician if he would be interested in coming to our meeting to talk about grounding. And I said, let me start off with full disclosure. We have people that are building stations that are looking for what exactly should be done from a lightning protection perspective. And he said, I'm not coming. You know, I do grounding based on best practices, but there's no way I will put my name on the presentation that's talking about lightning. Hang on.
You gotta be careful here, because I mean, grounding to electrician is for risk of shock. It's not for lightning strikes. And so, you know, we can talk about, you know, risk of shock and all that. You know, why you should have polarized plugs and grounding, you know, connections and all that sort of stuff.
At that point, I think Paul might want to say something. That was the first thing he said. He said, when I do things for best practices, it's according to code, and the grounding I'm doing is based on the electrical codes for house wiring. He's not a licensed ham. Okay, step one. Step two, he really doesn't know the RF side of grounding and what best practices would be. So he eliminated himself for two reasons. One, he doesn't know it, but two, he certainly doesn't want to talk about what he doesn't want to know and put his name on anything that could bounce off. Chip has you have a comment before I go back to Chip? Okay.
One is a comment and one is a question. Do you have a lightning arrestor, Bruce, on where your power enters into your house? And two, maybe we could find a professional engineer who works for one of the radio or television stations who is familiar with grounding to come up here and talk about it.
Okay. So in answer to your question, the second whole house surge protector is being delivered tomorrow. I have two 200 amp services. I can't solve it with one surge protector. Duke Energy will put whole house surge protectors at the meter, not on my house, because with the 400 amp service, it has some kind of a shutoff lever at the meter, and they will not put a surge protector on a meter box that has that type of a disconnect, because they're worried about flashover when they install it or at any point in time, and the flashover could cause more damage than a surge would cause. So I've been that route, and the only thing I can do is 2 surge suppressors, one in each breaker box. So
I have a brother that spent 30 years installing radio station towers, antennas, grounding, and transmitters. So he has some experience. He's across the country, but as a consultant, he Zoom, yeah, he could help us. That he knows more than anybody I know about that topic. Sure. Sure. Yeah.
We can't hear Bruce.
thanks, JR. Sorry, I'm violating my own rule here. So if we check with your brother or brother-in-law, whichever brother, okay, see if he's interested in coming to a meeting to do a presentation. If he is, we kind of like to have the PowerPoint thing, but we can help with that, okay? Just so we can record something rather than words. We can see things rather than words. That's why we like the PowerPoint presentation. But in interest of full disclosure, you know, if he's doing TV antennas, he understands radio stations, he understands the RF side of it. And that's why the question is coming up. People are building stations and they want to know what could they do to help. So
His lightning grounding, they use 8 and 10-inch copper ribbons to carry them.
so what you're going to hear is a solution that will absolutely work as long as you have $300,000 to $500,000 to implement it. Is that correct?
Not that much, but it's expensive. No, it could run significant amounts, but yeah. The other, just on related but different topic, I had a lightning strike come through a 1/4 mile underground spectrum cable connection and blow up a whole bunch of equipment. Anyway, and I had inadequate lightning protection on my cable coming in the underground.
So I'm not trying to do, let me show you yours, you show me, you know what, I'll show you mine, you show me yours. But years ago, we got hit twice, underground copper wires. Then we did this weird, wonderful thing. AT&T put in fiber and we went all Wi-Fi. And we had never had another issue that way. But this one here, we believe, is based on some kind of a ground potential change, because everything was unplugged and disconnected except for ground.
Thing you have to remember about lightning strikes, it's like a capacitor discharging. You've got a charge building up in a cloud, and they may go far beyond that if you really get into, I forgot the term, but the opposite polarity charge is circulating in the ground you're standing on. And the lightning hit is that discharge of energy, both from ground and the cloud discharging. So don't think of the ground as, don't think of the earth as being inert. It is not.
Yep. So I think, so Matthew, that particular topic I think is very interesting. It is one that maybe out of scope is too strong, but if indeed there is a presentation, it has to be scoped appropriately as far as what the presenter is presenting, or maybe what we ask and what the presenter is presenting, so people don't get a misinterpretation of feedback. Okay, there we go. All right. So, you know, if we can get your brother to do this, that'd be great. But I think we need to scope it, which might be easy from our side. We have people that are installing radio stations with outside antennas, and they want to understand what they could do, should do, best practices for RF protection. Maybe that's it.
There's really 2 parts of the scoping that has to be thought about. First of all, the qualifications. I mean, there is a Lightning Protection Institute which certifies people, and I'm sure he's probably one of those. The other thing is that there is a lot of published material that the experts or people, professionals use. And by and large, most of that information is copyrighted. It is valuable information. So even in a meeting like this, if it were to get in, you cannot show copyrighted information and post it on YouTube. So that's the other constraint that would be a part of this conversation, though it could be a closed meeting where fair use, if it's for education and not publicly distributed, that gets into a different situation. But that's another thought.
So when you guys do the bylaw update, we need one more officer. We need a lawyer. So anyway, but this is some of what we need to do as a board. Try to put some parameters around these. Is it a presentation? Is it a Saturday training? You know, if we believe it's out of scope, why do we believe it's out of scope, so we can bring it back to a follow-up meeting and maybe figure out what's going on. But, you know, in answer to Dave's question about, you know, there's a lot of things that are, you know, selected, but how do we prioritize them? How do we do what? You know, that's a big question. And that's why, you know, the top 5, that's why, you know, Matthew put the survey together so that, you know, okay, what are the top 5? Can we start off somewhere next year, you know, with, and maybe February, because if we do, in January, we'll do show and tell, so nobody has to rush around and get a presentation together over the holidays. So maybe something starts in February, and then, you know, Boyd and his team of vice president-elects staff positions there, the team president, you know, where does it fit? How do we sequence them? What are we going to do? So, Bob, do you have a question or no? Okay, I saw your hand go up.
Bruce, JR.
Yeah, JR, go ahead.
What I see happening is this seems like it's so important. You know, this might be something that might have to go over 2 meetings. It might have to be a part A and a part B. You know, depending on what we see is what you need to know first, and then how do you proceed down the line.
I hear what you're saying, and let me put me. I am not an engineer. Okay, I never will profess to be an engineer. I'm a builder operator. So if we took, and please, JR, I don't disagree with you, but let me try to position it for me. If we got into the level of detail that it took more than 1 meeting, the technical part would be well over my head. Okay, and there's probably a lot of other folks in this club that would be in a similar situation, because I think most people are looking at, you know, do I put a ground rod here? How do I hook it up? Where do I put a lightning arrestor? They're looking for gazintas and gazoutas. There's a good technical term, right? You have a wire that goes into something, and then the other side of that goes outa, and it goes to another gazinta. They're looking for a box diagram or a block diagram of what do I do for my station?
Bruce, if I may.
Yeah.
I think JR may have touched on maybe this is a training program, you know, half-a-day meeting, not a program or a 1-hour presentation at a club meeting.
It could be. I will leave that up to the leadership team for 2026.
And then the second thing I would add is that ARRL has published, I think, 3 books on bonding and grounding. And as I understand, Dan, you have to correct me, but the official standards are well defined. And I can't remember the name of the document. Please help me.
I would recommend anyone interested in a topic, you got to invest into it. Go ahead and buy the ARRL book, which would at least get you started in understanding more of the details of it. There's lots of stuff out there that is published. Duke Energy has published material, all kinds of organizations who this is their mission. For example, if you're installing Motorola systems on a tower for a EOC, there's lots of standards out there. And I will say this pretty confidently, all of it is copyrighted. It is not for free. If they've posted it on the internet, you can go look at it. But some cases you have to go buy the material. For example, even the National Electrical Code, I used to get that. That's updated every 3 years. I used to buy those. Long story why I needed those, but they have gotten so expensive I stopped doing it. So the information is out there. It is published material, valuable material, and therefore, in many cases, not for free.
I think the discussion has proven that this is an important topic, but it's up to us, each individually, to figure out how we're going to deal with it, because we're all in a unique situation.
I heard the word qualifications, and that really emboldened me to speak because I don't have any at all. However, I have been worrying about lightning striking radios for just about 75 years now, and it never has. Everything I've ever lost has been, as was just mentioned, transient that came in on a telephone line, a 6-pair telephone line from I don't even know who the company was, CenturyLink now. which is protected by the telephone demarcation box. And it still blew up a couple of switches and routers and modems and things like that. So here's Wilson's take. If you own a radio that costs more than you're willing to pay for a beer and you're worried about lightning, you should disconnect the radio and put it in your chair. And next time you want to use it, pick it up and reconnect it. And you will probably not be struck by lightning. There are a lot of wires coming into your shack. You probably don't even know what all of them are. And the chance that you're going to find them all and adequately protect them is near zero. Therefore, try to get away from them.
Thanks, Wilson. Ron has a comment here too. Okay.
I just wanted to add to Wilson's
go ahead,
comment
hang
that
on.
we had a lightning strike and it came in on the propane line.
It's nice you're there to tell us about it. Okay, Ron has a comment that I'm going to repeat for him. Motorola R Romeo 56. What is that? Is that a standard? Okay, Motorola spec Romeo 56 is the spec for the folks that build the buildings that are at the base of the towers. And I have one more thing. Let's get off of this and get on to whatever and some other topic before we run out of time. If we do the show and tell in January, depending on how many people we have sign up, one of the things I'd be more than happy to do is bring in the diagram that I put together. Because Wilson's comment about put the radio in a chair, or you don't realize how many cables and wires and stuff you have coming into your shack. This new procedure we have has 25 disconnect steps in it now. 25. And that's a lot of disconnects, but there's a step in there that disconnects everything. And one of them is a quick disconnect to disconnect the outside ground from anything inside. Radio equipment. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So propane is plastic. There's the propane we only use for the generator, way out in the back, and it's all plastic propane pipe. So it's probably plastic covered steel. So anyway, but we do have a quick disconnect now that disconnects the ground system for all the towers and antennas and everything that used to go to the 1/2-inch pipe across the back of the operating position, that I now disconnect that as one of the 25 steps. And Boyd has a comment.
Quick story. When I was in college, I was a volunteer firefighter. We responded to a vehicle accident where we had power lines down. As a result, we had to park the engine a ways back from the scene. As the chief and a couple of us and a police officer were walking toward the scene, at one point, the police officer says, "Man, my feet feel funny." And at that point, the chief said, "Stop." And we turned around and we backed up. Now, all the firefighters had rubber boots on. We didn't feel anything. But because the police officer had normal shoes on and the ground was kind of wet, he could feel that electricity affecting his feet. And that was a situation where the difference in ground potential between one step and another can get you killed. And if you can come across that kind of thing with something as relatively simple as lines down, if you get a direct hit from lightning, all bets are off.
Okay, let's close this topic. I think we've been on it long enough. Does anybody on Zoom or in the room have any comments relative to anything we've talked about tonight? Any questions for Boyd about the Christmas party? Any money to give Boyd about the Christmas party? I'll shut up. Everybody go over there now and sign up. Okay, guess not. Okay. Any other topics, Zoom or in the room? Yeah, pick up your wire on the back table, go home and build something. with that, I guess we'll close the meeting, and the next time we'll meet will be at the Christmas party on December 8th. Very good.